OMNI Creative Filter Photography course with Caroline Tran. Take one. The OMNI course, Chapter 4, Crystal Seahorse. Let's talk about our third, last but not least wand, the Crystal Seahorse. This one is so fun and creates such beautiful effects. Take a look at this portrait that I did here with the Crystal Seahorse. It was able to capture these really pretty twinkles from the bokeh in the background. I love how the Crystal Seahorse captures reflections, light, rainbows. It's kind of a blend of the rainbow and the stretch glass one, but much cooler, and it's able to create multiple reflections because of the facets in here. So unlike the stretch glass where you get one reflection, this one is able to create multiple. So you can see here in this photo of the crane that I created here, there's like, I think there's two that you can see. There's one here, another one here, and I feel like there was another one somewhere up here, but probably got cut off. Here's another example, and you can see the reflections here. The facet just like duplicates it and makes really cool effects. Here's another example of something more subtle that I also shot with the Crystal Seahorse. So you can see here, this stem and leaf here is reflected back up here as well. So it gives it this little like ethereal, dreamy type of look. It's abstract, there's little repetition, and especially if you're shooting something with a lot of bokeh, it looks like just lots of extra bokeh, which I love. So let's talk about the mechanics of the Crystal Seahorse. Does focal length matter? As you are choosing your lens, just like the other two lenses, same thing. The shorter the focal length, the more well-defined your wand is gonna look. The longer your focal length, the more obscure it's gonna look. So take a look here. This was shot on a 23mm lens. So you can see here that this is the wand right here. You can kind of see the shape of it. Thankfully, I shot it at 1.4, and that's why it's not as defined as it would be, but had I shot this at like f5, f8, f16, you would have for sure had seen the shape of the seahorse. But because I shot at 1.4, it's a little bit more obscure, but it's not as obscure as shooting it on a 50mm lens. So if you notice, they're both f1.4, but if you see here, you can see where the wand kind of starts and ends, the shape of it, and this is 50mm lens. So on a longer lens, it's more obscure. It doesn't even look like a wand at this point. It just causes beautiful reflections. The next thing, let's talk about how aperture affects the outcome. Same thing like the other two lenses. The larger your aperture, the more well-defined your wand is gonna be. So you can see on f16, you can literally see the shape of the seahorse in the frame, right? Like it just superimposes right over it like this. In contrast, when I shot it at f1.4, take a look at what a difference that is. You no longer see the outline of the seahorse. It's not quite clear what's causing it. You just see this cool reflection of the landscape. And I wanted to show you something in between as well. So this was f5.6. At f5.6, it's more defined than 1.4, right? 1.4 is super obscure. 5.6 is a little bit more defined, but not as defined as f16 was. f16 was super clear where you can see it, where you can see the seahorse. But 5.6 was kind of an in-between of both. You see the general shape of the seahorse. The shape is not as clear, the edges are not as clearly defined, but you also see the cool reflection too. So the Crystal Seahorse is great for reflecting lots of light in the facets. There's lots of different facets here, and depending on how you rotate it, you can either get lots of twinkle effect, like the portrait I did with the boy, or you can get a lot of reflections that are caused by the facets in here. All really cool and fun to play with. So let's talk about how the Crystal Seahorse works. How does this little guy here capture so much light and is able to reflect such cool things, right? The way it works is that light passes through these little facets here and is able to generate both blur and lens flare. So you can see here, the shot on the left was without the seahorse and the one on the right was with the seahorse. And you can see here, I got a little bit of flare. It flared in the form of a rainbow, which is super cool, but it also caused blur here. So you can see it's like not as well defined as it is over here without. The flare is also causing this hazy look here. You can also use the seahorse to create super exaggerated effects. So here, it's based on how hazy it is, you can tell that sun was shining directly on here. But look at the crazy rainbow effects that's able to come out. These little like ridges that you're seeing here is caused by all these little ridges on the seahorse here. Anytime you use the seahorse in a low contrast situation, you're going to be able to capture some really cool reflections from your surroundings that will create fun texture in your photos. It gives it the effect of, it looks like you're looking past something, like it looks like you're looking through a window. For this one, it looks like you're kind of looking through the window. She could potentially be inside the house and you're from outside. It's reflecting the environment around into this photo, and so it looks like it could just be reflections, because that's what happens when you look through a window, right? You're seeing reflections from other elements in your surrounding as well, and that's what this Crystal Seahorse is able to do. So in summary, your Crystal Seahorse is going to either create blur as light's coming through here, it can create flare as you've seen some rainbow effects, but it can also create reflections that gives it the illusion of looking through something, like looking through a window, and it's capturing the natural reflections that a window would naturally capture. So have fun with it, and let's talk about some of the best ways you can use this. So this is OMNI Course Video 4C, the Crystal Seahorse Best Uses. So now that you understand how this works, let's talk about what it can do. Best ways to use it, my favorite ways to use it. I love using the Crystal Seahorse for portraits. In this portrait session here, I was able to use this again to create, it kind of looks like it's looking through a window. You're capturing a lot of reflections from the surroundings, and that's exactly the look when you're looking through a window at somebody, right? It gives this sense of intimacy. It's like it's their private space. You're not intruding on their private space, but you're merely looking and observing from the outside. This is another portrait that I created with the seahorse, and I just love the effects. So you can see here how the lights, the little sparkle twinkle lights that are coming here, I think that's through the facets here as the light is coming through and hitting the curved part of the seahorse here. So these facets here are able to pick up a lot of flare, creating these really dreamy twinkle light effects. The Crystal Seahorse also creates a lot of reflection. So when I was shooting this landscape photo here, I used the seahorse to capture a lot of the reflections, say in the grass and in the mountains here. I also love the effects that the Crystal Seahorse creates when shooting flowers. It's so ethereal and dreamy, because you can see here in both of these photos here, I showed you both just to give you a variety, but it repeats, it reflects a lot of the elements around, and it gives this kind of just more dreamy effect because it still leaves my main focus in focus. So you're going to want to make sure that it's positioned in a way. I like to keep this right on the edge if I'm trying to create something like this, because I want a clear focal point. So my flower or my subject's face is going to be clearly defined, and I don't want that one to be messed with, but I have it in just enough so that it can manipulate the rest of the surrounding around the main focal point, and it creates like a really beautiful dreamy effect like this. So have fun with your Crystal Seahorse. It is great to create flare, it's great to create reflection, and it's great for blur. So many possibilities. I love it. I call it like my dreamy filter. This is the one that I use to create kind of that really ethereal, sparkly type of look. It also is great for creating, it looks like you're looking through the window, looking through from outside, looking in at somebody.